Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today is a very important day, so let's go over Tesla and let's figure out what we can expect moving forward. So as usual, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button. This is not financial advice and I'm not a financial advisor. And of course, my membership section on YouTube is live. The link is below for $3 a month. Excuse me. With all that being said, let's just jump right into it. So Tesla, hopefully that was a good luck sneeze, but hopefully Tesla closing, or gonna be closing roughly around $243. There's still about 15 minutes left. I'm recording a little bit early to get ready for, of course, the earnings call and report coming out very, very soon, just shortly after market closes, really. So let's talk about it, what we can expect moving forward. So first and foremost, obviously a bit of a rough day, right? Tesla going down about 4.7%, which is obviously a little bit of an underperformance compared to the market, which is also having a pretty rough day, to be fair, but Tesla a little bit rougher. Now could be as bad as Rivian. The Rivian's down a lot more. But the point is the fact that Tesla obviously not a great day. Now, what does it really mean, right? First and foremost, we did obviously break below this blue line, right? I said that was strike number one, right? We talked about that, right? That was around 246, 247, right? We discussed that a few days ago, maybe yesterday. I don't remember exactly. They all blend in now with me, but we did talk about it, right? So we're below that. We're below the 21 EMA, 50-day moving average, 100-day moving average. We're below all of those. That's obviously not ideal, right? That's some pretty, not amazing stuff to hear as a bull. However, with that being said, even though we fall below this, as I said, as strike number one, strike number two, and probably the most important strike and situation and area, if you will, coming up, is the extremely low 240s, like 240 to 242, right? Which is pretty much roughly where we're currently bouncing at right now. But it seems like we will be closing above at least that crucial level. So that's a good sign for the bulls, right? The fact that we are closing above that level is a good sign. And the fact that we're not collapsing below it, which is good. Now, as you know, and I've said this many times, excuse me, I'm a fan of selling off into earnings. That's just me. That's just how I like to see it, right? That's just a kind of a personal opinion, really. But I like to sell off into an earnings. So for instance, in this case, Tesla selling off almost 5% going into earnings today, right? I like that. I did buy the dip. In case you're wondering, I did buy the dip. Obviously, I still have, a good amount of extra cash left on the side to buy. If we continue falling post earnings, I'll gladly buy that dip as well. But I did buy this dip because, again, I like selling off into earnings. To me, that almost like lowers expectations slightly, if that makes sense, right? Because if you're rallying 5% into earnings, you're technically increasing expectations in a way. You know what I mean? It's kind of suspicious, maybe a bull trap. And I just don't like it. There's too many times I've seen that turn into a massive trap. Obviously, the flip, selling off into earnings. I'm a bit of a fan of that. I like to see that. So I'm feeling a little bit good going to these earnings. Of course, I still have extra cash, like I said, to buy the dip if it happens. Now, as long as we close above this, it's a good start for the bulls and it's a good sign. On top of that, we also have the squeeze meter here. If you look very closely, still showing signs of that blue line. It's not as large as I would like to see it. In fact, it was actually larger than this blue line yesterday. But it actually decreased, obviously, because we just continued selling off throughout the day. It's still roughly the same size, but unfortunately, it's not really going too much higher, but it's still showing blue lines, which is still it's better than showing the kind of, the yellow, orange, or gold, whatever lines below. So that's a good sign for the bulls. Now, what's not a great sign is the fact that the MACD is now kind of picking a direction here and moving to the south side. That's not really ideal as well. The MACD on the weekly is also kind of picking a little bit of a southwards direction here. A little bit concerning, but keep in mind on the weekly, we are again pretty much right at the 21 EMA and we're just ever so slightly below the 100-day moving average. So if there's a place to bounce and there's a place to hold, it's this very low 240s. Now, obviously with something like earnings, keep in mind, it's a very difficult thing to predict. Sometimes technical analysis just completely gets thrown out of the water when it comes to something as large as earnings, especially something like Tesla's earnings. So take that into consideration. The fact that if earnings, let's go over the couple of scenarios, right? If earnings is a miss, and or even if it's a hit, or even if it's okay, but for whatever reason, Tesla sells off post-market, right? After market, after the earnings gets released, maybe during the earnings call, or combination of the two, whatever. And let's say we gap down below 240. There's two scenarios I see. First scenario is it's just bad. It's just straight up bad. We maybe come up at best case scenario and retest the breakdown, which again will be essentially retesting this red line, but this time from going from bottom to up into it. Most likely a successful retest, and then we go make our way continue down even further, right? Probably into the at least low 200s. If not, honestly, if it gets really bad, then we'll probably enter the mid 150s or like 100s rather. Now, that's option one. Option two is we still got below, but there is a chance. I can't remember where it was. It happened when I remember when Russia invaded Ukraine. I believe it was. I think it was here or something like that. I remember. No, it was way before that. It was way before that. I remember. Oh, this one. It was this candle right here. Beautiful. This is the candle I was looking for. Right. This candle right here. Obviously a horrible day, right? Russia invaded Ukraine, except whatever. We're not getting into politics. But the point is, it's the fact that we had an astronomical gap down. Astronomical gap down. Literally the gap down itself here was 8% of a gap down. That's an astronomical gap down. And what happened? Not only did we recover the full 8%, but we went even further beyond that. We actually went way above that and actually went to green. We ended up closing above the closing price of the previous day, even on an 8% gap down. Doesn't mean this is obviously what's going to happen, but the point is the fact that these kind of green candles, these just astronomical green candles like this, can happen. So that's option 2, where essentially if Tesla misses earnings or we sell off for whatever reason after earnings gets announced, get a gap down, we may open up at, let's say, 235 as an example, right, which can happen. But then we just recoup, we come back up, and instead of it being just a retest, we actually get right back into the channel. That to me will be extremely bullish if that were to happen, but that is a possibility. So you have to be ready for all these situations to happen, because it's a difficult thing to predict. No one can predict this, and you have to be ready to adapt to the circumstances and to the information you see being provided, right? It's very important to understand that. So those are the 2 things I can see happening if we gap down, essentially post earnings. So that's number 1. Number 2, let's say we get gap up. Let's say it's a great earnings and we rally 4%, 5%, whatever the case may be. Let's say let's just do a modest 4%. I think options is pricing in like a 6.5%. Let's just say a nice, modest 4% gap up, right? That'll be putting us at somewhere around the 250s once again. That'll be a good sign, because then we bounced off of this area. We got back into this blue channel over here, which is a good sign as well, making this is the false breakdown. False breakdowns or breakouts are usually very bullish or bearish respectively, right? So that will be back into the channel, which is great. Pretty much right back into the moving averages, hopefully slightly above them as well, which will be a good sign to see as well. And I think from there, we'll get essentially another bounce overall, ultimately off of the bottom of this channel, which is essentially what's happening today, assuming we get a gap up or some bounce. And then there's an actual real possibility we overall, ultimately over the next, half a year, maybe even a year, make our way to this top of the channel once again. Now, with that being said, keep in mind, this situation right here looks very similar that we talked about before to Netflix, right? Netflix was in a massive ascending channel just as Tesla is right now, right? Just keep that in mind. And obviously it broke down, and now it's obviously just bleeding out pretty aggressively actually ever since, right? We talked about all the way back here on Netflix when it came back to retest that. We talked about how, it's looking kind of bearish. It's probably retesting it, and then it's going to continue downwards below the moving averages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We talked about all that. And that's exactly what's happening. So there's still a chance Tesla can make something like this overall happen. But there's also a chance that Tesla is essentially right here where Netflix was. Then it bounced beautifully up. And then look what happened. And it came back to the top of the channel, or the green line essentially once again, before obviously a lot more pain ahead. There is a chance that that does happen for Tesla, where we bounce from here, make our way back up to like the mid to high 300s, honestly. Like mid 300s, we'll say for now-ish, maybe high 300s, to the top of this green line, top of the channel. And then from there, we actually get like an actual bearish sell-off, and then really like true pain really begins. Always a possibility, but nonetheless, that's kind of what I am seeing right now. So it's important to adapt as the earnings comes out, and kind of get an idea what to do from there. So those are the scenarios I personally see. Taking a quick look at options market before we end off the video, we have of course a little bit of a mixed flow now. It actually was pretty bearish. I'll show it right here. I don't know, it was right here, right? Pretty bearish. Look over here. A lot of bearish prints here. We had 1.2 million prints all over the place. Now we just have 1 million premium prints on the bearish side here. 250 puts expiring March of 2024, but a lot more green circles. Very little green circles here, and if there are, they're very small. Now we have a nice amount here, right? About 1 million premium right here of calls coming in, which is great to see. Another 1 million premium in calls coming in over here. So seems like it flipped a little bit, right? Keep in mind though, these bearish prints were 5 hours ago. That was before the sell-off really accelerated this far below. This was back when Tesla was like 247, 248, something like that. Now we're at 242. So, those prints obviously, or those puts rather, they printed, they did really well. And now they're probably taking profit before earnings begins, not to risk anything. But obviously looking a little bit more bullish here now moving into earnings, which is a good sign to see. But that's kind of what I am seeing right now, ladies and gentlemen. Taking a look at the weekly, we still have this potential inverted head and shoulders. So even if we come back down technically all the way to low 200s, there's still a chance that we get a massive bounce from here, and ultimately on the weekly make this a false breakdown and overall play out this inverted bullish head and shoulders. Technically a possibility as well. So we'll see. We'll come through it. This earnings will be very important, very telling. We'll talk about it tomorrow, of course, as per usual, but make sure you adapt. I gave you guys my personal situations that I can see and scenarios that I can see playing out. No one knows for sure what's going to happen. If I did, believe me, I'd be extremely rich, because it's, if it was that easy. So keep that in mind. But all that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you as usual tomorrow. Peace.